Welcome back to another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders. I'm one of your hosts, Dion Watson, and I'm joined by my co-host, Angela Davies, and we are going to take you back under the barrier tape.
Today, as well as myself and Dee, we're really excited and honoured because we have a wonderful guest with us, Anthony Schembri. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So we met you a couple of years ago, actually online, when we were all delivering at a global forensic conference. And Dee and I absolutely loved your presentation. And
We
then
did.
we ended up meeting a couple of years later in person in Sheffield. Our guests are going to absolutely love this podcast. Anthony has got an absolute wealth of experience in policing and in forensics. He's had an illustrious career dating back to, was it the 70s and 80s, Anthony?
I'm too old to tell.
Too old to tell. Fair enough. He's been the police commissioner of New York, the corrections commissioner. You're the corrections commissioner in Rye, is that
City.
right? In New York City.
Yeah.
Academic, professor, and also author. So we're super excited to have him here today. And
I'm so impressed with that introduction. I can't wait to hear what I have to say.
Neither can we.
No, can we? So, Anthony, can you start us off by telling us how you actually got into policing and tell us a bit about your career?
When I was about 15 or 16, a neighbor's brother went missing. And they asked me to take her to the police station and report him missing. And when we got there, the people in front of us were reporting a lost dog. And the desk lieutenant said, well, we'll have police cars out there. We'll look for the dog. And he tried everything he did to comfort them as he took their complaint. So they left. Now it was our turn. And the lieutenant said, how long has he been missing? And she said, 16 hours. The lieutenant said, we don't take reports on missing people unless it's 48 hours. It's the police department policy. So I said he was walking his dog at the time.
Brilliant. That's quick thinking.
It's funny you should say quick thinking, because there was a detective that was going upstairs who heard that, and he kind of crooked his finger at me. And I went upstairs as the lieutenant was now forced to take the report of the missing dog who was with this person, okay? And his name was
Fantastic.
Detective Johnny Burke. And he says, hey, kid, he says, you're pretty fast on your feet, because he got it. See, he knew what I did.
He knew what you were doing.
He says, what are you going to be when you get off? I said, well, I want to be a cop. He said, well, and he started to type, and he was typing like this with two fingers. I says, gee, you don't type very well. And I had just taken a course in typing. And he says, could you do better? I says, yeah. So he opened the gate. I came around. I sat down in his chair, and I typed his report for him from the notes. So he says, look, that's terrific. Could you come every once in a while? We make a lot of arrests, and we get slowed down. He says, you know, sometimes we bust 3 or 4 guys or 5 guys at a time. He says, it takes more to do the paperwork. He says, we'll always buy you lunch or something. I said, no, it's okay. So anyway, they wound up sending a police car to pick me up. So my neighbors saw me getting in and out of police cars, and they thought I was a bad kid because the police car was always putting me in the back of a police car. And I think that's a skill that a police officer should have, the ability to think on your feet. I worked in a grocery store, and a man came in and he said, I said, can I help you? He said, yeah, I want to buy you half a grapefruit. I said, what? He said, I want to buy a half a grapefruit. He said, no, miss. I said, look, mister, you got to buy the whole thing. He says, listen, you little punk. I want to buy a half a grapefruit. I don't want my ass to get kicked over a grapefruit. So I said, well, let me talk to the manager. Maybe he'll permit me to slice it for you and sell it to you. So I took it to the back of the store where the owner sat on a desk so he could see everybody. Because believe it or not, people stole fruit and vegetables. So anyway,
Yeah.
I got to the back, and the man quietly and secretly followed right behind me, which I didn't know, of course. And I got to the back, and the owner said, "What's up, Anthony?" I said, "Some ass wants to buy a half a grapefruit." And I turned, and he was right there. And I said, "And this gentleman would like to buy the other half." So I was lucky.
Fantastic.
I was lucky to have an ability to think on your feet, which when I interviewed police officers to become police officers, I always tried to ask a question about their ability to think on their feet, because
It's so
that
important.
skill helped me a lot in my career.
It sounds like
So that's how
it's
it
something
started.
you had from the very beginning as well, from a young age, from 15, being able to
Yeah.
think on your feet like that.
And the detectives actually trained me. On the way home one night, I was in the back of the car. They were driving me home, and they always, if I typed more than 2 or 3 hours, they bought me lunch. They drove me home. They really took care of me. And of course, I knew the paperwork, and I was being trained by the best detectives in New York City. So they're driving me home one day, and they got a call of a man with a gun to his wife's head. So they said, "Let's go over there." And they put the siren on, and here I am in a police car with the siren on. This was one of my dreams, okay? Got to remember, I'm 15, 16. So they get over there, they get out of the car, they said, "Anthony, stay in the car. Maloney, I want to see this." So I got out of the car. It was a very narrow hallway, and he had a gun to his wife's head, and he said, "If you come close, I'm going to shoot her." And one of the detectives says, "I don't care, shoot her. She doesn't mean anything to me." And he turned to the other detective. He says, "Do you know her?" He said, "No, she doesn't mean anything to me. Go ahead, kill her." He said, "Oh, by the way, after you kill her, my partner is going to shoot you, and he's going to get promoted." And he says, "Hey, congratulations, John." And they're congratulating each other in this little hallway. They don't even have their guns out. This is how they knew people. And this guy said, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" He said, "Oh, let me explain it. After you kill her, my partner's going to kill you, and he's going to get promoted. They're going to give him a medal, and he'll get a raise." And he turns around and he says, "What is that now? $3,500 more a year?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I'll buy you dinner." And I said, "What is going on here? This is not like I see on television, you know?"
No, definitely
And
not.
so they're explaining to this guy, and he says, "You mean to tell me after I shoot her, he's going to shoot me, and they're going to give him a medal, and he's going to get promoted?" He says, "Yeah." He threw the gun down, and he says, "I'm not going to shoot her, so he gets a promotion."
Some
And I
reverse
said, "Wait
psychology.
a minute, wait a minute. What just happened?" Okay. Now, these are people that could think on their feet. They never even drew their guns.
Yeah.
They were able to read this man. They knew he really didn't mean it. You know? I mean,
Use
it
some
was just,
reverse psychology on him.
yeah,
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
away. These detectives, they were illiterate. They couldn't make a sentence correctly. I had to correct their sentences. Okay? But boy, did they know people. Yeah.
And that's, you really need that, don't you, to work in the criminal justice sector, I think, to be able to think on your feet, but also to be able to read people.
Especially in Brooklyn or New York City, because it comes hot and it comes fast. You got to be able to think on your feet.
I can imagine. So that's quite an amazing lesson at 15 to go to that and have that experience. So it didn't put you off, needless to say.
No, because when I was in homicide, I went to extreme lengths to do what I had to do to make a case, from taking down walls to we had four girls that were murdered in different parts of Brooklyn. And this was a time when there were no criminal analysts, and detectives only looked at the one case. Well, we wound up having nuts in the stomach of all four, because I was in the prosecutor's office. My responsibility went all over the borough. So why would four children have nuts in their stomach? It don't make sense. So I sent the nuts to the laboratory and I said, tell me about these nuts. It might be a clue. So the guy calls me back up and he says, oh, these are nuts. I said, I know they're nuts. I'm the one that sent them to you. He says, well, that's all. He says, well, even when I tell this story, it drives me crazy. So I said, send the nuts to the FBI, okay, and see what they say. So now it's a week that's gone by. I'm waiting for the FBI. Finally, I get on the phone with the FBI. I said, tell me about the nuts. He said, they're nuts. I said, I know they're nuts. I'm the one that sent you the nuts, for Christ's sakes. He says, well, that's what we could tell you. He says, but there's a guy, he says, he's the world's expert on nuts. Okay? They sent him the nuts. I can't get this guy on the phone. So finally, I jump on a plane. I go to Washington. I finally find this guy. You're talking about the world's greatest expert on nuts. I go into his office. His garbage can is a big pistachio.
I mean, he really did love nuts.
You think I'm kidding? You think I'm kidding? So now I'm saying he's got an N on his tie. There's no letter in his name that has an N on it.
Oh, brilliant.
Were you thinking he's nuts?
I said,
Yeah,
Doctor,
he is nuts.
I go in there. He's pissed because I didn't have an appointment. I said, can't get you on the phone. These nuts are part of a murder case involving one, maybe three or four others. He says, well, I looked at them. They're 50% ash, 10% riboflavin. I says, Doctor, look at me. I don't want to know the contents of the nuts. I want to know, is there a clue here? He said, well, these nuts are a filler nut used in confectionery. I said, like what? He says, like Cracker Jacks. We find a suspect under the driver's chair in the car, a half-eaten box of Cracker Jacks. He pulls up to a child, hands him some Cracker Jacks. The kid reaches into the car. He grabs the kid's arm, pulls him through the window, drives away. Of course, I subpoenaed the good old doctor to come to the trial, okay? I always walked around with subpoenas in my pocket, not a gun. My subpoenas got me more evidence than a gun.
I bet.
Once they saw a subpoena, then
was it.
Whatever I wanted was okay.
Putty in your hands.
Brilliant.
So you started at 15 typing the police reports, and we know that you moved over into homicide. Did you work as a police officer or a cop on the streets first before moving over to homicide?
Oh, yeah. I went into uniform for a very short period because the DA's office was having a raid on gamblers, and they needed somebody, a rookie who could run, because the bookies let kids carry their numbers. They never carried numbers with them. The kid would run it, and these detectives were in their 50s. They couldn't run a half a block. So they went to the police academy, and believe it or not, I came in second or first, whatever it was, in running. So they needed a runner. So anyway, that was my job, to sit in the back of a detective's car, pull up to a gambler, and chase the kid to get the numbers from him. Well, they liked me, and I was assigned to the DA squad right out of the police academy.
That's really fast, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, I saw guys that went to the police academy with directing traffic, and I was in the homicide squad. And I got to know prosecutors, and they would always say, "You wouldn't understand because you're not a lawyer." So I became a lawyer, and I still couldn't understand.
Wow. So you became a lawyer as well?
Yeah, because we had incredible trials. And even in the worst cases, the funniest thing would happen. And I had a case where we had a guy who raped about 20 or 30 girls, or sexually abused 20. At that time, we didn't have the word serial. He was a serial sexual abuser. And of course, none of these girls wanted to testify. But
very difficult cases as well, aren't they?
When we have modus operandi, his modus, he would say filthy things to them as he did these sexual abuses towards them. Now that's a modus operandi where I now can connect him to dozens of others. So we had this one girl who was willing to testify. She was a high school girl, came from a Catholic family who they never cursed. They went to church every Sunday. He raped this girl. Well, I convinced the family, number one, to stay out of the courtroom. They never even said a curse word. So I taught her how to curse.
You did.
I had to make her comfortable in cursing and repeating the filthy things that he said. So finally, I got her okayed, and I said, we got her on the witness stand. Now, I can't tell you that story unless I go to the other part first. We had a jury, 12 people. Juror number 12 was an old man who fell asleep half the time. Juror number 11 was a very sexy woman that got everybody, when she came into the courtroom, everybody looked at her. Okay? She's juror number 11. The old man, juror number 12.
Okay.
She takes the witness stand, and could you tell the jury and me and this court what he said to you? And she said, he said, and she stops. It now dawned on me that I got her used to cursing in front of me alone, not in front of a courtroom filled with jurors. Made a motion to exclude the courtroom, denied. So we came up, I said, I'll let her write it down. You know,
Good idea.
you either had a loss or a neutral. That's the best thing we can do.
Yeah.
I said, could you write down exactly what he said? I get the note. The judge gets the note. It goes to me, goes to defense counsel, back to me, back to the jurors so they can pass it along. It gets to juror 11. Remember juror 11?
Yeah.
The pretty blonde. She gives it to juror number 12, the old man half asleep. She gives him the note. The old man looks at the note. The old man looks at her. The old man looks at the note.
He's been
Yeah.
half
He
asleep. He
thinks
thought
she
it was
wants
for
to
him.
do these
Thought it was
things
off
to
him.
him.
Oh no.
This
Oh
We
goes
no.
back,
laugh, but that's an
and
awful case.
That's
then now the
terrible,
judge
yeah.
says, "Give me the note," and the juror says, "What note?" And he sticks it in his pocket.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Okay, mistrial. So
That's
even funny things in the courtroom, someday somebody is going to collect.
So did it really go to a mistrial
No,
after
they
that?
made a motion, and the judge didn't permit it. So we
Phew.
went forward.
I mean, we laugh at these things, I think, because it's quite unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
horrific case of a serial rapist and a young girl there who's struggling to speak and actually give that evidence, and because it was so foul, some of the things that he said. But then for that note to be passed back and forth in this situation, I mean, you couldn't make that up, could you? It's just
No.
Well,
bonkers.
it shows you about how critical preparing witnesses are,
Yes.
Yes.
and the extent. I think I told you about the bishop that killed the two girls. I took the floor out of the house. I showed you. I think I sent you the newspaper article.
You
You
did.
did.
I'll never forget when I moved the bureau drawer. I found a piece of skin on the floor, and the lab does what's called a bar-nucleus test. That means they can tell if it's male skin or female skin. So if you're looking for females and you find female skin, very strong circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, we'll take the floor. So the guy from the lab, I always had a lab guy with me, because I'm not going to wait 2 hours for him to get there. That's another trick. See, I don't wait 2 hours, 3 hours for this guy to finish lunch, okay, to find out where. No, he's with me.
He's
He's in
taking
my
him with you.
pocket, okay?
Brilliant.
Sensible.
So I don't even start out until I have a forensic guy handcuffed to me. Okay.
Handcuffed to
Even
you.
though I know a lot about forensics, he still knows more than me. So he says, "What do you mean you want the floor? You want me to take a picture of the floor?" I said, "No, I want to take the floor out of here. I know what jurors like. They like exhibits, okay?
Like to be able to
Yeah.
see things.
So it's lights, camera, action, because they see it on television. They want to see it in person." He says, "Well, you're going to take the floor out of here?" I said, "How are we going to do that?" I said, "You know those machines when they break up the floors on the street? It goes. Trrr. I said, "Well,
Yeah.
get me a machine that goes. Trrr, and then we're going to go. Trrr, and we're going to take the floor." He said, "Yeah, how are we getting it out of here?" I said, "We're going to take the wall down." He says, "Can you do that?" I said, "I'm the deputy chief, and this is a crime scene. I own it. Are you kidding me? I'll take this house down if I have to. The wall is coming down." We took the wall down. And I got
Brilliant.
pictures of me with the wall down. So anyway,
I-
and I always took pictures because I was always teaching. It was like a second career, but I always thought for the class to actually see it, give them an experience. So anyway, we rolled the floor into the courtroom on a dolly, and I put cardboard in the wheels so the dolly would go slow. What did I say a
Just
minute ago?
take it in.
Lights,
Camera,
camera, action. Okay.
Yeah.
We took the floor right past the jurors, and of course, the defense counsel said it was prejudicial, outweighs the probative value. But I knew this judge, and he knew me, so he knew if I had a case in front of him, lots of fun.
Yeah.
So
I
sometimes
think
that's what you have to do.
I think that you were one of the first people to take a floor out and roll it into court, weren't you? I don't think it had been seen or done
Yes, the
before.
first time, it was the first time a floor was used as evidence. Now, we had a guy who let loose a lion to kill someone, and I wanted to bring the lion into the courtroom. She's laughing. Okay.
That'd be another first.
But it's what they call depraved indifference. And the only way a jury is going to see depraved indifference if they see that lion and they hear that lion growl. The judge wouldn't let me do it, but I got it. I got that lion up to the 9th floor of the Supreme Court. Okay.
Seriously?
That's as far as I got.
Brilliant.
I can't believe you got it that far.
I would have had that, but the judge felt that it was too dangerous. We made a motion to take the jurors to the circus to see it, but the judge said no. Oh, the fun we had getting evidence admitted. Remember that jurors like to see exhibits.
They're no
They do.
ordinary exhibits, though, are they?
I remember once I brought in an axe and I dropped it for about 12 inches high and it fell on the prosecutor's table. Of course, when the axe hit the table, all of the jurors' heads turned to see what made that noise. Now, that judge knew me and he said, Anthony, don't do that, Anthony. See, when he called me Anthony, I knew I was in trouble.
You got your full Sunday name. Anthony, you moved really quickly over into the DA's office and working on homicides. Can you remember what your first big case was?
They all kind of blend in. It's one after the other. The one taking the floor out of the house, the one with the bones, those were the ones that gave me a reputation and a lot of attention. It got us attention to the lengths to which we will go. Like when we found the two bodies, when we took the floor out of the house, originally we thought he buried the two bodies on 40 acres of land. You can't dig up 40 acres of land. But I had about 20 detectives I took upstate. We executed a search warrant. And then, I have an extensive library. Anyway, when a body dissipates, it produces enzymes. So we had information that he cut them up and he buried them in the land. Now, you can't dig up 40 acres of land. But the Japanese had a case similar. They took a potato peeler and they put it on a 2-foot length of wood and they stuck it in the ground, twisted it, pulled it up, and now you have a sample of soil 2 feet below ground. And then you test that soil for the presence of enzyme. So we did that and we came up with some enzyme. We dug, we found a dead horse. And we found out that the Army had dogs trained in Vietnam to smell bodies. You got to remember, this is new to us. So I said, I had a very good secretary. I said, Helen, call the Pentagon. Tell them I want a dog that smells dead bodies. So about an hour later, she comes in. She's got all of these notes. She says, they can't give us a dog. I said, why not? She says, because there's a law that says they can't lend you military equipment. I said, what the hell are you talking about? I want a dog. She said, well, they passed the law. I said, law what? She said, it's called posse comitatus. I said, the hell is that? It sounds like a skin disease, for Christ's sake. What does that mean, posse? She says, they can't lend military equipment to civilian authorities. I says, give me the phone. Get me a general or somebody on the Pentagon. And I get this general on the phone. He's from the South somewhere. He said, General, my name is Anthony Schembri. I'm the deputy chief. He's, well, I said, I want to borrow 2 dogs. He said, well, boy, he said, we got a lot of military lawyers here. And they say, I can't lend you a dog because of posse comitatus. That's considered military equipment. I says, hey, General, I never spoke to a general before. What's your first name? He says, oh, my first name is Arthur. Go right ahead. I said, well, my first name is Anthony. He says, well, what is it, Anthony? I says, Arthur, I don't want a goddamn submarine. I don't want a tank. I want a dog, for Christ's sakes. You're sitting in the Pentagon. You got stars on your shoulder. You don't have the juice to send me a damn dog. Is that what you're telling me? Next day, helicopter lands. 2 dogs walk out.
Amazing. He
Fantastic.
couldn't say no to you.
Now,
No.
actually, this story is subject to connection. A lot of people are afraid to use their power.
Yeah.
Power is the basic energy that transforms your intention into action. I teach a course on leadership about people using their power. Leadership is about power, the people who have it, and what they do with it. So I'm using my power. Believe me, I have got in trouble for using power. My power.
I can
I
believe
use
that.
my power. I use power I don't have. I get a second mortgage on power I don't have, but I'll get out of it later. Okay?
Yeah. It's all about
So,
confidence and
anyway,
delivery.
people have to use, and a lot of people are afraid of getting in trouble. They don't take that extra step. As long as you do it in good faith and not abuse your power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Very different things.
abuse your power. I mean, there's ways of getting people to confess and even don't know they're confessing. I responded to a domestic violence. A woman shot her husband with a bow and arrow and shot him in the back. When I got there, he was alive. He was on the floor. He had an arrow in his back. There were guns in the room. I said, why'd you shoot him? She says, I didn't want to wake up the kids.
Fair enough.
And he looked up at me and he said, this is the quintessential domestic violence excuse. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I said, he looked up at me and he said, I don't want to press charges. He's got an
Yeah.
arrow in his back. And
Doesn't
I
wanna
looked
press
at him and he
charges.
said to me, I don't want to press charges. And I said, I know, because you love her.
Did he agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a way of getting around with your ethics intact.
There is.
And you got to watch the ethics that you use.
Can I ask, did the cadaver dogs find the bodies?
Yeah.
No, we had an informant. He told us exactly where the bodies were. Then, I'm glad you reminded me, we got about 500 bones that we dug up in a lake. He cut the bodies up, put the bones in a lake. I got 6 police divers who went into the lake, brought the bones out of the lake, gave it to me. We kept the chain of evidence short. He gave it to me, I gave it to her, he gave it to me, he gave it to the judge, he gave it to the pump. Who got it? I don't know. Okay?
Yes,
Now we
that
can't
happens often,
introduce the
doesn't it?
evidence.
Yeah.
That's, you got to remember, we
Yeah.
need that chain of evidence. So anyway, I brought the bones to the medical examiner's office, and he says, Anthony, these are human bones. That's what I could tell you. So I don't know what it was. It was a holiday. It was something. I was in a toy store, and I saw a picture of a children's dinosaur. And I said, holy smokes. I jumped on a plane with my own credit card. I went to the Smithsonian, and I figured the guy who could put a dinosaur together could put a body together. So I didn't even know what they called the guy. So I went up to the big booth, had the bones in the bag. I didn't tell my boss where I was going. And I said to the girl, what's the name of the man that puts the dinosaurs together? She's the director of paleontology. I said, I got to talk to him right away. She says, do you have an appointment? I said, no, but I have the bones of 2 girls in this bag, and I want him to look at them for me. I forgot to tell her who I was. She called the cops.
She called the police.
Yeah.
I get arrested. Okay.
Carrying
no.
2 bodies about.
They handcuff me. They take me to police headquarters. I tell them who I am. They called my boss. I'm reliably informed that when my boss told them what I was doing, his desk actually levitated.
He's like,
Brilliant.
what's Anthony been up to now? What trouble's he getting everyone into
Yeah.
now?
They apologized. I apologized. They drive me back. She apologized. And she says, I thought you were a crazy man.
I mean, I can understand why.
Out comes
Yeah.
the doctor, director of paleontology. As the Schembri luck would have it, he's a police buff, puts me up at his house, puts the bones together, puts a skeleton on a board, puts all the corresponding bones on each side, comes and he testifies 25 years to life on both counts consecutively.
You've seen a lot over the years and a lot of brutality. Have you found different coping mechanisms over the years, or have you found anything that's significantly impacted you?
I think everybody has. Look, I was not only in homicide, I was in different bureaus. I don't want you to give your viewers the wrong thing that I spent my life in homicide. I spent my life overcoming some of the problems in the criminal justice system, whether it was in homicide, whether it was in narcotics bureau. I was an inspector general. I went there. I was appointed by the mayor to go after corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse. I've arrested a lot of city employees for corruption. So it's a way of approaching your duties and responsibilities, no matter what the responsibility is, whether it's in homicide, narcotics. You press as hard as you can. You don't give up.
Yeah, because I was reading that in when you were commissioner, you actually managed to reduce burglary by 50% across
Yes.
your
Yes.
area. Is that right?
Yeah, you know how that happened? We were listening, one of my officers were listening to a couple of burglars. And they said, oh, don't go there, man. Don't hit any joints over there because they stop cars.
Okay.
The burglar didn't want to go into the city because they stopped cars. So
Okay.
stopping cars may be a deterrent. So I said, okay, officers, if they're not on a job, have got to stop cars every half hour.
Yeah.
They can't just drive around aimlessly. They have to stop cars. And now that hurt me in public relations because we were stopping a lot of cars and the legitimate people, they didn't like that. So it had to be followed with a public relations campaign to tell them why we were stopping so many cars. And because we got a reputation for stopping cars, burglaries went down.
What a
That's
great
fantastic.
initiative.
Well, no, it was a
Yeah.
crapshoot. It was I took something we heard. Well, there was no research into it, and we tried something new, and it worked.
It worked. Yeah.
It works. You ready? Bulletin. I'm issuing a bulletin. Stopping cars may prevent burglaries. Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
So you could call it the Schembri for burglary.
Schembri burglary
Prevention
prevention. You also did a lot, didn't you, with juvenile corrections? You were
Yes.
you were commissioner in corrections as well, and
I was
managing
I was secretary of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice. I was appointed by Governor Bush. We admitted 123,000 children a year. We had 26 detention centers. I had 1,400 probation officers, 65 prevention programs that we funded. It was the largest juvenile system in the country. We reduced juvenile crime 16%. I got the Distinguished Service Medal from the Florida legislature, I'm proud to say, which is the highest award that the legislature can give to a Florida employee.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was a wonderful job. I enjoyed it. The employees were literally beaten up by the press, the legislators. Morale was in the toilet. Let me tell you something about our toilets. I walked in one of my detention centers, and an officer in the locker room, and the officer had a folding chair. And I said, "What are you doing with the fold?" He says, "I'm going to go bring it to my locker room and get dressed." I said, "What do you need a folding chair?" He says, "Because we have raw sewage that comes into the locker room." I said, "Wait a minute. When you say raw sewage, are you telling me what I think you're saying?" He says, "Yeah, raw sewage from the toilets."
Oh,
I said,
nasty.
"Wait a minute. How long has this been going on?" He said, "Well, I've been here 5 years. This has been here as long as I've been here." I says, "I'll fix it tonight." He said, "What?" I says, "I'm going to fix this tonight." He says, "How are you going to fix this tonight?" I said, "You watch me." At midnight, I moved the warden's office into the locker room.
Amazing.
How was that? Guess what? He fixed it
Got
in 2
fixed.
days. And then, funny thing happened. Sick leave went down. People started to look better. I got to the governor's office for a meeting, and I was just new there. And he says, "How's my new secretary doing?" I says, "Just getting to know everybody, Governor. Not a lot to report yet." He says, "Yeah? Are you moving any more chairs into locker rooms?"
Amazing.
He heard it.
Laughing about it.
He smiled. Okay. Okay. Well, the word got around. Someone who's going to take care of the employees has just arrived. Do you
Brilliant.
remember the movie Sergeant York
I
with Gary
don't.
Cooper?
Oh.
No? He played a hero from World War I called Sergeant York.
Okay.
And they were going to promote him. He gets called into the captain's office, and he says, "I'm going to promote you to corporal." And you know the first thing he says?
What?
"I'll take care of my men's the best I knows how." His first thought on his promotion was about his men, was about the people who were going to work for him.
That's
Okay.
good management.
Now that's leadership. You
Yeah.
take care of the people. When I got there, I go into another jail and I find a woman who's sitting on a chair with 4 wheels, but one of the wheels is missing, and they got a block of wood there so she don't fall over.
Oh my goodness.
This is a chair she sits on 8 hours a day.
Oh.
So I
God.
said, "That's an interesting chair. I don't think I've ever seen a chair like that." I said, "How long you been sitting in a chair like that?" She says, "A couple of years." I said, "Really?" She said, "It don't bother me." I says, "It bothers me." I
Excellent.
says, "Where's your boss's office?" She says, "Down the hall." I says, "Take that chair and swap chairs with your boss's chair." She says, "Oh no, I can't do that. He's my boss. You don't understand. I'm his boss.
Yeah.
Get his chair." She gets the chair. She comes down the hallway with this tufted leather chair. I says, "You're going to sit in that chair till he finds you a better chair. So he comes back, he says, Mr. Secretary, what's going on with my chair? I says, you let somebody who works for you sit in a chair like that? You know what that says? That says, Mr. or Mrs. Employee, we don't care about you. We don't care about you so much. We're not even going to give you a good chair to sit in. And you know what the employee says? All the 100 things they could do to make the organizations better, they don't do it.
Not going to do it. It's true.
She's going to sit in your chair till you find $60, whatever it is, and buy her a new chair.
Because you've also done a lot around leadership, a lot around ethics. Like your career has spanned across law, of course, criminal justice, forensics, writing, academia. So you've got so many strands to your bow. Do you have a favourite part of it, or a part that's been most rewarding to you?
I was very lucky, I was always surrounded by smarter people than me. You know, when I got into the district attorney's office and I listened to them talk, I said, I better keep my mouth shut and do a lot of listening, you know?
Yeah.
So I listened to a lot of people and I picked up a lot of things. But you got to remember, since I was 15, I worked in a precinct and I learned a lot from those detectives. So I already went there with a couple of years of experience. And I was kind of the mascot for those detectives. Being police commissioner was a job I liked. My wife didn't like me in homicide. She didn't want me to see death every day. My wife liked my sense of humor. She still does. I still make her laugh.
That's lovely.
She didn't want me to lose my sense of humor. She just thought it would affect me. So she didn't want me there in that job for a long time. Then, you know, I took over commissioner of Vermont, but it was too cold. So I came back to New York as a police commissioner. I was there 14 years. That's a long time for a police commissioner. I still want to take over a department again.
Do you?
Yeah, they're not going to hire me.
Why not?
Because I'm 83.
Nobody says no to Anthony Schembri.
Yeah. But I got a headhunter that's dying to place me. He says, so the headhunter says, how am I going to handle your age? I said, I got a way of handling my age. He said, well, tell me, because I got a couple of cities that would love to hire you as your chief of police, but they're not going to, not when you're 82. I said, well, I have a copy of a police report. I was mugged in Chinatown, coming out of Chinatown, around 10 o'clock at night. The guy mugged me with a knife. And I have a copy of all of the injuries that he sustained.
Fantastic.
He mugged the wrong man, didn't he?
He did.
Mugged the wrong person.
He really did.
And I said, so I'll send you this emergency treatment of this guy. And when they talk about my age, you could give them a copy of that. You can attach it to my resume.
Yeah.
So I would love to take over a department again.
So as well as your illustrious career, as we said at the beginning, you also had a TV series made about you called The Commish.
Yes.
Yes. That was a lot of fun.
Was it?
That was, you know, I was a technical advisor on a TV series. So what happened was they kind of found me interesting and they approached me. They heard some of the stories. You know, I'm a storyteller by nature. They had an idea about doing a story about an unorthodox type of police chief or police commissioner and how he solves crimes. They went to ABC and they wrote a script and we did it for 5 years. They hired me as a consultant, a writer. I learned how to write for television. I had to write 3 scripts a year, pay or play. I was technical advisor for all of the scripts. Okay. Wow. So when they wrote the scripts, writers would call me and say, how would you do this? How would you do that? What about this? What about that? I'll never forget that. There was there was one where they had a story about 2 boys who were adopted that turned out to be killers. They called me and they said, how would you go about trying to find out two brothers who were adopted. I said, well, research says that adopted kids usually get adopted within a 200-mile radius. That's terrific. We could use it. It'll work on the script. Boppity beep, boppity bop. So the next day, I get an airmail package with the videotape and the script. The guy called me up. He says, did you see how that 200-mile radius, how we worked that in and we were able to? I says, yeah. He says, by the way, where'd you learn that? I said, it, and I made it up. He said, what? I says, I made it up. He says, we're not paying you to make things up. You're the technical advisor. I said, don't give me that shit. You guys make up stuff all the
All the
time.
time.
I said, did it work? He said, yeah. What are you worried about?
Brilliant.
How did you find the time on top of your day job to become technical advisor and start writing
Oh.
some
Well, that's
scripts
a
on
very
top?
good. Well, they were in California, and I had to preserve the ethics. There were 6 lawyers in that room. We still got it wrong. I still got bad press on it. Even trying to watch your ethics, you could still, when you go out to watch your ethics, you could
Yeah.
still screw up.
It can easily be done, can't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Because as you know, we're both ex-crime scene investigators. Dion, at one point you were applying, weren't you, for a part-time job as a
Yeah.
crime scene investigator? And the force said no because we were running our events, but also because we'd launched our forensic awareness app, you know, the one that we've told you about, Crime Scene Assistant. Is a forensic awareness app for frontline responders, and they were having issues around the ethics of that.
We were saying in terms of the app, potentially it could teach criminals how to avoid forensic evidence, which it's very much the opposite of that, isn't it? The app.
Yeah, it's supposed to be training police officers and frontline responders in how to approach and preserve crime scenes. I think, you know, you've mentioned a few times, Anthony, some of the issues that you've had around police officers being the first in attendance. I think you sent us a press article about it, about police officers actually getting the fingerprints everywhere and disturbing the crime scenes.
Yeah. See, their job is to screw up the crime scene.
Yeah.
I get to a crime scene. There's a police officer there. I said, the window is open. Must have been a burglary. The cop says, no, I opened it. It stunk in here. No, the first thing I said to him, did you touch anything? He says, no. I said, okay. The radio was hot. Was the radio on? He said, I shut it off because it was hot and it was too loud. I says, there's cigarettes in the ashtray here. He said, oh, yeah, I put my cigarettes out. And he says, okay.
Wow.
So other than opening up the window, shutting off the radio, and putting out, you didn't touch anything.
Fantastic.
Do you know, you want to know the best one?
Yes, please.
Yes.
They made a movie out of this. Very famous Broadway producer. Hated. This man was hated on Broadway. Butler wakes him up, brings him his breakfast on a tray in the morning. They find him dead, bound, hand and foot, gagged. The butler takes out the gag out of his mouth and tries to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Yeah.
The guy was killed. It was killed Friday. This is Monday morning. He's going to give him
Let's give him
mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
CPR.
Okay. He could stand up by himself, okay? But he's going to give... You got to remember what you're dealing with. He runs out. There's a traffic police officer on the corner of Fifth Avenue. He runs up to him. He grabs him. He says, my employee is dead. He leaves his post. He runs upstairs, this townhouse. He finds the guy dead. He says, I got to notify my supervisor. He calls the traffic sergeant. Traffic sergeant responds. This is now an unusual incident, a murder affecting a traffic officer. He says, I will notify the traffic captain. The traffic captain comes. The traffic captain still had the part of his brain that is not removed when they make you a traffic captain.
We're
So
laughing because we know what you
he,
mean.
he said, let me notify the local precinct. They send a patrol car. The two officers respond, say, it's a murder. We better call one of our detectives. They called the local detectives. They says it's a murder, it's a homicide. We got to call the homicide bureau. In the meanwhile, the telephone operator, he used to get $5 from the Daily News, the Journal American, the New York Times for letting them know of a murder case.
Oh.
He called the Times, $5, the News, $5, Journal American. So far, he made $15 without leaving his chair. Bing, 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 bing. By the time the homicide guys got there were so many people in that room, they didn't have room for the body, so they rolled it under the bed.
Is that serious?
They made a movie out of it.
Oh my
Did that
goodness.
really happen?
The movie was not about him rolling. The movie was about this unsolved murder, but it didn't have the part of he had so many enemies that one of the detectives says, how many suspects do you have? He says 1,500.
Brilliant.
I think, because we could probably talk to you forever, but I think that what we should do is talk about your book.
My first novel.
You have it there, brilliant. Because you've written books before, haven't you?
Yes.
I've got it in Russia, a Brooklyn solution.
I started this book in 1981. I put it away because of the jobs I had.
I'm not surprised you were pretty busy.
So back and forth. Finally, when we moved to Florida, and I just taught, I had the time to play with it. And what happened was we arrested a Russian diplomat, and I was called down to the embassy, and we talked to some embassy people, the ambassador, and I asked them about any crimes that they had in Russia, and they told me a story about killer. And then I got the idea, and what happened was I did a little research, and he told me about a serial killer in Russia that killed about 40, 50 people, children. They executed him, and they found out he was the wrong guy.
Oh, no.
Wow.
So I came up with a story about the Russians hiring someone to bring in, and they first went to Scotland Yard, and they thought that would work. It didn't. They went to the Sûreté, it didn't. Then they went to the United States, and they got this lieutenant from the NYPD, chief of detectives, sends him to Russia to handle this serial crime. And that's how it started. I came up with the plot, and my background was rich in characters. I met so many characters in my life. I just got to pluck them out of the air. Oh, a medical examiner, I got him, and a female assistant DA, I got Janine. Whatever it was, and then the one that I enjoyed the most is the dialogues. If you remember, the dialogue made people laugh. These were actual dialogues I had, and they're realistic. This is how people really, really talk.
Your book is doing what this podcast aims to do by taking people under the barrier tape. And so it's fiction, but actually based on realities. And you've pulled and drawn on all of those years' experiences to pull this book together.
Yeah.
Can people expect a lot of these stories that you've been telling us today in your book?
I find that I don't tell a story for the purpose of telling a story. The story is attached to a message. And I've had people 30 years ago say, tell the grapefruit story. They remember the purpose of the story. And that's in the classroom, but the kids too. The secret is to give the kids a good time. They come early, they stay late, they follow you into the hallway. And that's why, I consider myself a good teacher is to attach the practice with the theory. And I make a
Yes.
marriage of the practice and the theory. And that's important.
We
You know,
agree.
I could go in the classroom and I could say the formula for crime is the intent and the act. And by that time, I think I can put the class to sleep.
Yeah.
But instead, I like to go into the classroom and say, I hate my neighbor. All the kids are looking. I says at 3:00 in the morning, I break into his house. I shoot him while he's in bed. I run out the door. The police grab me. I'm arrested for murder. I point to one of my students and I say, what crime did I commit? Now, that's the rest of the students are now paying attention because they don't know if I'm going to call them in next. So they say, well, it's attempt, it's a this, it's attempt, it's a that. Then I go, all right, let's go on to the next case. Lady Largebottom goes from England to France and buys lace, smuggles it back into the UK. She's arrested for smuggling the French lace into the United Kingdom. Turns out the lace was British lace, where no duty was due. What crime did she commit? Now I got a class that's thinking. And now you challenge these kids, and we take intent, we take act together, and we give them real cases. So the kids, there's a story there that when they leave and they read stories in the newspaper, they know what crime they really committed.
Yeah.
Because they has to satisfy those qualities of what the formula of what crime is. And the formula for crime in law is the intent and the act. But in police work, it's opportunity and desire. You need two of those things together, the opportunity and desire. Take one away, you don't have a crime. So you have two different parts of the criminal justice system that have two different formulas for crime. And we have to put them together.
Bring them together. Yeah.
Yeah.
We always say, you know, that we do some teaching as well, and we really love it. And
Yeah.
we always find that the students enjoy it more because we relate it to our experiences in the field, because we too have those stories and we can get them thinking a bit about real situations. And we always say, don't we, that we think that in these kinds of fields, practitioner learning is much better than if you've got an academic teaching. And that's no disrespect to academics, but in a field where you're in practice, to be able to take those stories into the classroom and give not just something out of a book, but actually discuss the realities behind it. And there's also how things should be done, and then actually how things are done, and that thinking on your feet that doesn't come from a book, like you were saying earlier.
And the other part that I find, and we did this in Brooklyn, we taught forensic people, just because a guy knows everything about hairs and fibers, it doesn't mean he's good on a witness stand. So we did a training. We did a training program to put them on the witness stand and cross-examine them. And guess who cross-examined them? Take a guess.
Was it you, perchance?
I used to go home to my wife and say, don't cook dinner. I had dinner already.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today and coming on the podcast. It's been, as always, an absolute pleasure. And we'll look forward to seeing you next spring and going for that dinner that we owe you.
My pleasure.
Thank you to Anthony again, and thank you to all of our listeners. We hope you have enjoyed this episode as much as we have. We've got sore cheeks from all the laughter from Anthony's stories, so we hope you have too. And we will catch you in 2 weeks' time for another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders, where we will take you back under the barrier tape.